how am I cleaning up my diet as a holistic nutritionist? Because shock horror, I don't eat perfectly. And A, that's okay. B, I'm talking about why I've ditched the all or nothing approach. And C, we are looking a little bit at survival mode and why we need to normalize that in the world of eating. Let's dive in. Sorry. There we go. So this may come as a surprise to you, but as a holistic nutritionist, I don't eat perfectly. So in this week's video, I want to talk about how I am currently kind of cleaning up my diet and making some upgrades, tweaks, improvements to the way that I eat. Because thankfully, you don't have to eat perfectly in order to make progress with your hormones, your gut health, your mental health, body composition, all of these things. And I want to share with you some of just the reality of how I've been eating, some of the things that I am looking to change and am changing, and also the approach that I have, because I think there's so much awful stuff on the internet that is just so all or nothing, right and wrong, on track, off track, on a wagon, off a wagon. And the reality is that is not what's going to serve you ultimately. If you're wanting to create and become this radiantly healthy, well woman with energy, balanced hormones, healthy body weight, solid mental health, good gut health, where you're going to be that 85-year-old granny in the garden doing yoga, which is my dream, then the way that you get there is not constantly being on or off something. It's not constantly the latest fad, the latest medication, the latest anything. It's actually by making sustainable changes. And so what I have been thinking about recently, and actually this whole year, all of this year thus far, is about how I want to make some upgrades to the way and the foods that I'm eating for myself and for my family. And so I want to go through them with you. But before I dive into that, I want to kind of share with you my approach. Some of you might be watching this and you've been on my email list, you've been in my world for a while, and you kind of know the vibe. Some of you will not. And so I want to explain it. When we're talking about making changes to the way that we're eating, I really think about it in two different camps, or there's two different phases. Number one, there's clients who come to me that are in these acute phases, that things are really bad. They are in constant pain. They are constipated every day, bloated every day, in pain every day, have awful periods that are heavy and flooding, are so miserable with their weight, are really struggling with anxiety, panic, depression, low mood, you name it. And so if you're in this phase, sometimes when I'm working with clients, we are going to make more drastic changes. And I don't even like the word drastic, but we're going to make bigger fundamental changes. Also, because we can make those changes. Why? Because they're getting support from me. They are not doing it alone. It's really difficult to make some big, broad stroke changes when you're walking it alone. But to balance that spectrum out, also I work with a lot of people with quite disordered eating. And so the other approach that we have in this kind of acute phase is also making sure that we are using food as medicine and really using what the science says and the evidence says about helping their specific, I'm going to think of a particular client I'm working with right now, their particular digestive issues. And there is a lot that we need to do because there's a lot of quite awful issues that have been going on for a long time. But there is a history of a more disordered approach with food. So we need to do it in a way where we're using food as medicine, but we are also cultivating a healthy, balanced, calm relationship with food that is not based on fear and restriction. And that is my job as a holistic nutritionist, is to try and balance these things of this is what the science says, this is what I think is going to help you, versus the food is joy, there's pleasure there. We don't want you to be all focused on restriction or diving into this all or nothing mentality. So that's this kind of first phase. That's often what I'm doing with a lot of the clients that I'm starting to work with. But this next phase, which is what I'm focused on personally for me right now, is just these tweaks and upgrades. And the approach I love to have for that is really about adding in, really focusing on what you can do, celebrating the progress that you make. And to be fair, that's the approach I have in my life with my clients across the board. Every good time I have a client session, I'm starting with, what are you proud of? What's gone well? And they're always like, because our brain is so wired, so committed to focusing on things that have gone wrong, that we didn't do well, that could have been better, that still aren't working, where we drop the ball on this and we totally forget the progress or the things that we have done. So that's probably the overarching philosophy of what I do in my life, but especially what I do as a holistic nutritionist, is really thinking about, okay, what can I add in? What am I here to celebrate? What's going well? What am I proud of? And really being aware of the negativity bias that goes on within our psychology. That just is what it is. We don't even want to blame it. We don't even make that part of our brain wrong, but we do need to counteract it if we want to make sustainable, positive change moving forward. So what I want to talk about in this video, I'm not in any acute, disastrous point with my health, which feels like a miracle because I really used to be. Even last night, I was at a yoga class and I was doing like the best part of a yoga class, obviously, which was Shavasana at the end, where we're having a little nap. And I was just had a couple of tears coming to my eyes because in the class itself, I did a couple of moves that I was like, I would never have done this years ago. We were practicing the splits and I did not do the splits, but I was like not dying. And I just felt I feel now so grateful because I used to not be able to weight bear on my wrists. I used to not be able to run. I'm training for a half marathon. I used to be in that acute phase where things felt really awful, quite dark. People were telling me I was okay when I wasn't okay. Blood tests were coming back normal when I knew I wasn't normal. There just seemed to be this huge collection of symptoms constantly adding up. And I was in my early 20s being like, is this the rest of my life? I want to walk up mountains. I want to run. I want to rock climb. I want to dance. I don't want to be able, struggling to open a door or not be able to do yoga because I can't weight bear on my joints. It's not how I want to live. And that's not how I am living now. So I was sitting there at the end of the yoga just being like, God, I'm so grateful. And then I'm so grateful because I see this, and this is what I do with my clients, is walk alongside them as they create this transformation. And I point them, tell them and give the strategies, and we do the lab testing. But anyway, that's a bit of a side tangent, but it's where I'm at now isn't big, huge, drastic things. It's just about tweaks and upgrades. And that's what I want to share in the videos. How, as a holistic nutritionist, how do I approach this just gradual kind of tweak? And if you are like, no, Kezia, I feel actually really stuck. I'm in that kind of more acute phase, I'm struggling phase, book your root session with me. You can book it directly right now, get it in the diary, and we can do that deep dive over those 2 hours. But let's go and have a look. I want to show you some of the ways and some of the things that I want to upgrade, tweak, clean up, so that I can just keep feeling better and better and better, because I feel better now, 37, having 3 babies, than I did 10 years ago. I feel better after having my babies than I did before having them. And I think some of it is down to this gradual process. I am not all or nothing when it comes to my health, when it comes to my food. It doesn't really often work unless you have a phenomenal amount of support. Sometimes we do more drastic things with my clients just to get them feeling better, just to get their head above water. But they are really supported by me in that process with resources, strategy, weekly accountability. And for most of us, or for you watching that, that's not always going to be the case in your life. So we've got to look at what is maintenance look like? What does it look like when in your week to week when you're trying to just make changes and eat as best as you can eat? So let's go have a look. So one of the main ways, and my kitchen is such a mess. Anyway, but I'm doing this anyway, is... So what I have learned over the years, and what I found, and what I tend to always experiment with clients, there we go, is that I always want to do a gluten-free experiment with clients, because 70% out of the time I find that going gluten-free with a lot of people, even if they're not in celiac or have allergies, they generally find it helpful overall. Oh, I'm going to prop you down, then I can be hands-free. And it can be really helpful for doing gut healing work, can be really helpful if there's thyroid issues. And it's always an experiment. It's always an area that I'm curious about. Would you feel better with it? Would you have better energy, better brain fog? Anyway, for me, I have not eaten gluten probably for about over 15 years because I generally feel better. It used to give me more acute, bloated digestive issues. That's not the case anymore. I could go out, in fact I did. I went out on Wednesday, had lots of gluten, went out for dinner, had this beautiful, delightful meal with sourdough bread and risotto and pasta. So like I don't have bloating from it. I can totally tolerate that. I have the resilience for it, but it's not something I want to do every single day because I find it just drains my energy. But after having the twins, I just got into the habit of gluten-free bread. Now, it's not this specific brand of bread. This is just what we have in the house right now. So one of the ways I'm cleaning up my diet is trying to avoid this gluten-free bread. For many years, actually, I was grain-free. I didn't eat grains at all. And then I started to introduce gluten-free bread because, you know, if I had one baby here, I could like put the toaster down with like my chin on my nose, you know? But there was no way I was like making a loaf of bread. And then like imagine one child, and then there's a 2-year-old also still running. It was insane. Anyway, one of the ways I'm cleaning up my diet, getting rid of gluten-free bread. Why? Why is that? Because if you've ever looked at the ingredients of a gluten-free packet, do you see how intense that is? What have we got in here? We've got a million types of flours, we've got vegetable powder, stabilizers, calcium carbonate, humescent, vegetable glycerin, preservatives, natural flavorings. Fine. And full transparent, I've been eating this kind of thing consistently for the last 4 years. Fine. That's fine. No shame, no judgment. And I probably will continue it because again, my approach is not like all or nothing. So I'm telling you the way I'm upgrading and the tweaks I'm cleaning up my diet is making more homemade gluten-free bread. Yet I still have processed free bread in the house. And guess what? It's okay. It's okay. Why? Because I'm focusing on making progress. And look, here is said progress. Here's my gluten-free bread I made at the start of this week. So that sandwich bread was just for some of the kids' pet lunches, but look, I've been making, this isn't the best loaf I've made actually, but I've been making gluten-free bread. Now this, if you're making gluten bread, sourdough bread, you would probably have, sorry, such a creaky dishwasher. Your bread would have like 2 ingredients in. Gluten-free bread, you're always gonna have more ingredients, but basically all of the ingredients that go into this I'm really happy with. It's not ultra processed. I know exactly what they are. It's amazing. Is this bread gonna make delicious sandwiches? Absolutely not. Is it as nice as normal homemade sourdough bread? No, it is not, but that just is what it is. So the next thing I am cleaning up in my diet has a similar theme, but I want to go back and share with you one of the key principles that I've talked about for years. I talk about with clients and I still firmly believe in. I think a lot of the work I do as a holistic nutritionist is always about finding the line, the balance, that tightrope between foods that are medicine, foods that are really going to help us on a cellular level to thrive and become our most resilient, radiant selves. And the other side of that, not the other side, but also include foods that are pleasurable, joyful, feel easy. You know, we don't want to eat air quotes perfect foods at the cost of our stress, our mental health, our relationship with food. The amount of times on the internet that I see people who are nutritionists, health coaches, wellness influencers, and I'm just thinking, you just have disordered eating because there's so much neurotic type behavior around food. It's ultimately not healthy. It's why I'm a holistic nutritionist. Yes, we are going to look at your food, but we are also going to look at your labs, your blood test results, your gut microbiome test, your sleep, your lifestyle, your environment. We're going to even touch on things like your relationships because all of that matters. Okay? But back to how I'm cleaning up my diet. So at the start of the year, I was just having a bit of an honest reflection and thinking, there's far more ultra processed foods in my week to week diet than I would like. And I want to change that. So that's been part of it. That's whether getting rid of gluten-free bread or just reducing gluten-free bread is a better way of saying that. And the next thing is pizza. So back when the twins were little, we got into a habit of like getting some oven pizza maybe once a week. at one stage, or once every 2 weeks. I think we then reduced it to, just so that there could be an evening meal that was literally shove it in the oven 11 minutes later. It's great to have meals like that. I can see why oven pizzas were invented. Just a really easy meal. And so that's what we've been doing. And that's totally fine. I made that mindful choice. I knew the ingredients in it. I knew there was lots of fats that weren't brilliant, whatever. There was various factors to it. But one of the things I realized this year was like, oh, that's one of the regular ultra processed foods we're having. I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't want that. I want to up level. I want to grow. I want to evolve. It doesn't serve me. And I finally maybe have the headspace to think about, okay, let's making some pizza dough. So more recently, I've been experimenting with, and I'm still experimenting with this, but trying to figure out the best gluten-free. Well, actually, no, that's a lie, because this has got spelt in it. So I've been experimenting with spelt, gluten-free, all various different types of pizza bases that I'm making from scratch, and just generally trying to make pizza from scratch. So that is the other way that I've been cleaning up my diet, which is surprising. It surprises a lot of people that for the last however many years, a holistic nutritionist has been eating oven pizza on a regular basis. But yeah, I'm totally here for that. You know, I've even told clients to do that sometimes. I know, radical. What wildness is this? But I think sometimes you've got to honor the realities of your life and not make yourself wrong. Because let me tell you the problem with eating an oven pizza. It's not the oven pizza at all. It's all the mental drama that goes with eating the food you air quotes think you shouldn't eat, the air quotes bad food. It's the eating the oven pizza, feeling bad, feeling guilty, feeling like you failed, and so therefore just drinking lots of beer, eating lots of crisps, eating lots of chocolate, and basically starting a binge. That is what is the most problematic things about some of these ultra processed food. Yes, there's the actual ingredients that we do know aren't super helpful, and the macronutrient ratios in them aren't always serving our bodies best, but once a week or every now and then, it's not a massive problem. The problem is how we often spiral and the relationship and the psychology we have with those foods. That is one of the biggest things. But because I could eat oven pizza in a mindful way, I didn't feel bad about it. And let me tell you, it would be really easy. And I have had to do some work on this over the last 5 years of just like, okay, so you're a holistic nutritionist. You should be blah, 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 air quotes, you should be healthier. You should be, and I'm a holistic nutritionist, so I can feel like a hypocrite or that people are judging me, but you'll have your own backstory, won't you? And that's normal. That's okay. But being aware of that, being aware of the thoughts and beliefs you have about food, and being aware of when you spiral, because food is medicine, yes, but it's also food. You don't spiral for hours and hours about whether you've taken paracetamol or not. No, it's a tool and you use it, and it helps with your life. And that's not a perfect analogy, but it's a similar thing. Food is food, and it can be medicine, it can be joy, it can be pleasure, but it's not something that we want to have at the center of our thoughts all day. No, there's way too much other fun stuff to do. So anyway, this is me wrestling with trying to create a new pizza base. This one's got buckwheat flour in and spelt flour in. You can see how I was struggling with some of the bases. In the end, rolling them out between two greaseproof bits of paper. Not great for the environment, but that is actually what worked. And this turned out to be pretty yummy pizza. Kid approved. I would do it again. And this is like one of the best ways to improve my health. I'm basically saying I should eat more pizza. I just need to make it homemade. Like, I'm down for that. I also want to normalize some things as well, and just hopefully give permission for you and for anybody out here who feels like they've just had to make compromises in terms of their health or their food in order to get through life's circumstance. And some of what I've been very slowly, this hasn't been a fast shift, this is like a slow shift over the last 7 months, is really just realizing, I'm coming out of what you might call survival mode, but I don't really feel like it has been, because I've been so aware that I've been in it. It's been quite intentional, and I've made quite intentional compromises in lots of areas with life. But in this video, I'm specifically focusing on food and food choices. And all the compromises I've made with food have been ones that I've been really mindful and intentional of. So a little bit of a backstory of how how I got to the place of where I'm eating, which in the last couple of years has still been great. This is no shade on how I've been eating. I've still been prioritizing eating really well, and I'm really proud of the default habits and the way that I eat and live and nourish and honor my body with my food choices each day. But it's not as healthy, air quotes, necessarily, or as nutrient dense as it may have been in the past. And I just kind of want to normalize that a little bit with seasons of life. So 4 years ago, nearly 5 years ago, I gave birth to twins. I had a really awful pregnancy with them. Thankfully, they were healthy. I was technically healthy, but I was bedridden for a lot of that. The sickest I've ever been with hyperemesis gravidarum, really awful. I also had a 2-year-old at the time. We were still kind of in the throes of like lockdown eras, all of that stuff happening. And then the girls were born, and the birth was really great, and they were really healthy, which I'm very lucky with. But then I had 3 kids under 2. And so the way that I ate just had to change. Now, and I want to be really clear, like 2 things were happening at the same time. Number one is I had some default settings about the way that I ate that were effortless and easy for me to uphold. So it's not like I just went back to like binge eating and eating really crappy processed food. I didn't. Was really strategic and planned and was eating really nutrient dense food, because one of the best ways to recover from giving birth is to really fuel yourself with lots of nourishing medicine, nourishing food. And I've always recovered pretty well postpartum I've only had 2 births, 3 children, 2 births, 2 pregnancies, 3 children, always recovered well because of how intentional I was with nourishing myself post-birth, eating plenty of nutrient-dense food, restoring nutrients, minerals, waters, supporting my nervous system, yoga nidras, getting support, these kinds of things. So that is always something I felt passionate about. But after having the girls, I was just aware that I didn't have the hands to chop stuff, and I needed to make compromises, and that was okay, And it's finding that fine line of what I do with my clients is hopefully really help them to create new default settings around their food choices, and also helping them to know their own unique body so they know exactly what works for them. So for me, I knew postpartum that gluten wasn't going to be part of the menu. I knew that I wanted really good levels of protein, and I wanted whole foods, nutrient dense things. Those were some of my main kind of principles. And because I'd already made those changes, that actually wasn't that difficult to uphold and maintain. But I was aware that there was things like before having girls, I mean, this might be a ridiculous example for some of you, and you're like, Kezia, this is insane that you didn't do this. But I wouldn't buy like chopped frozen vegetables. Like chopped onions that's frozen that you just take from the plastic packet, or chopped butternut squash in the plastic packet. Why? Because I was trying to reduce my plastic waste. I wanted to not have tons and tons of plastic. That's something that had to just, sadly, and I was sad about, it take a much backseat when I had 3 kids under 2 and I was trying to feed myself and them nourishing foods. That's just kind of one example. Another good example is things like oven pizzas, just spending money on overpriced gluten-free oven pizzas, still prioritizing the gluten-free part because I knew that helped me, but still a gluten-free oven pizza is not exactly the epitome of brilliant health choices in terms of chemicals and fats. But that's what we did for quite a long time. It was easy to have one meal a week where I wasn't necessarily cooking or thinking, and obviously the kids loved it and it was really nice. And so that might all be a bit waffly, but it's just to normalize the seasons of life and to give yourself some compassion and to know. I think the thing that really made the difference with me is because I'm a holistic nutritionist, I knew what to prioritize. And I still do. If life goes to, all chaos, if things get hard, I know exactly what to laser focus on and what to ignore. I know not to get distracted by this supplement, this way of eating. I know for me, I don't need to think, should I go vegan? No, I know for me, When life gets stressful, I need to be gluten-free, I need to eat good quality protein, I need to eat fish, I need to eat meat, and I need to make sure I'm having good amounts of carbohydrate as well, especially if I'm keeping my activity levels higher. And that is gold. And knowing what works for your body and what to prioritize allows in more stressful seasons for you to let go of other things. And where I'm at now that my twins are nearly 5, not quite, but nearly 5, I'm now at the point where I'm going, I could probably start picking back up some of these things. Like I can make pizza dough from scratch. It's actually not that hard. I have the headspace. I could bring that back in. I could bring back in more baking. I could bring back in not making some of these less nutrient dense food choices because I have the capacity to. So it's really important that you do what you have capacity for. And FYI, the way to increase your capacity is to get support. It really is. Like, I had so much support when the girls were smaller, and even now I have my own mentor and coach who is supporting me. I've had so much therapy in the last couple of years, but I also do want to normalize the seasons of life we find ourselves in. And if you have been in a more survival-based season, that's okay, but you do get to decide what happens next. You do get to decide what you need next. Don't make your past self wrong. Just have curiosity and a lot of compassion of why did I, because to be honest, what I do see a lot with clients is they have been in survival seasons and they have utterly abandoned themselves. Like there's been zero intention, zero thought about food, zero thought about themselves. And sometimes that is just what it is, depending on what you're going through in life. We can't always control the things happening to us, and you are just in pure survival. But it's really looking, okay, why do I so readily abandon myself? Why did I so readily let go of looking after myself? What can I learn from that? And there's never meant to be any judgment or shame here. It's about compassion and curiosity. That's really how I do a lot of my clinical work, actually, is being curious and having a lot of compassion for, which starts with having compassion for myself and then can overflow to the clients around me. Okay, anyway, let's go and look at some of the food stuff. The next thing I have been doing, probably for the first time, if I'm being honest, is starting to wash my fruit and vegetables properly. Simple thing, I get it, but I have literally probably never done this, and it's just a really great way to kind of get rid of some of the dirt, the bacteria, the pesticides. I do this with my organic veg, I do this with the unorganic veg. Stuff that looks dirty, like this is from my veg box, this lettuce, but also the stuff that doesn't look dirty, just to really increase nutritional value and make sure I'm not getting any harmful bugs or extra things into my gut microbiome, which I see happen a lot of the times with my clients. And I've worked really hard to have a much healthier gut, and so I don't want any added nasties. So that is one thing I've been doing. Also, side note, how beautiful is all this colourful veg? When they say eat a rainbow, they are right. It's so good for you. The next thing that I have been doing is just getting a bit better at investing in really good quality meat. Now, this is something I've done for a long time, but after having the kids with just a hectic schedule and also trying to rebalance a budget from going from a family of 3 to a family of 5 and all of the costs that come, I didn't really prioritize getting good quality meat. So what I mean by that for me personally is I try to make sure I buy 90% of my meat directly from a farm that I know has good farming standards, looks after their animals. Also, when they're processing and making the meat itself, they're not adding lots of horrible stuff to it. So I get sausages and burgers from here because my kids obviously love sausages, but I don't want them to get all the nitrates and all the other crappy stuff that's often in a lot of just supermarket sausages. So this has been something that I needed to have the headspace to slightly reorganize our family grocery budget for. And then B, the headspace to do that separate order. And I tend to do a meat order about every 6 to 8 weeks-ish. Generally speaking, I think this one that I'm unpacking here is probably about 2 months worth, 6 weeks worth, depends on our budget and what else is going on. But for a roast chicken, I'm really prioritizing a properly free range roast chicken, which I know is expensive. So we had to make other kind of accommodations in our grocery budget. But this is really important, for how well the welfare of the animals themselves, but also the quality of the protein and the nutrients that you and my family and my kids are getting really matters. So what are some of the tweaks and upgrades that you could do? These aren't like complete overhauls where you're completely changing everything in your entire pantry. But what are some of the small things that you could do that could create real changes, tweaks? Maybe it's getting better meat quality and budgeting that in. Maybe it's switching to organic broccoli and cucumber. Maybe it is starting to make some gluten-free bread or sourdough bread or whatever it is. But that really think about, you don't have to change everything at once, but that doesn't mean you should just do nothing. The best way you're going to make changes is by making incremental changes. So I hope that has been helpful. Those are just a couple of the real life things that I've been working on in my very messy kitchen. But plus side, look, I do have some pretty beautiful flowers in here. So I think flowers make up for the fact that there's just, look, I never close a cupboard either. But I hope that has been helpful. And this isn't about making yourself feel bad of like, oh my goodness, Kezia, I eat gluten-free bread. I have not quality meat. No, don't let your brain go there. This is about making sure you have an approach where you're constantly creating gentle momentum. You're moving towards the woman you're becoming, the healing that you want to have, how you want to feel, having better hormones, better energy, better body composition, feeling your best and most radiant self, but doing it in a way that's compassionate and gentle and also really effective. Just because you're like a little bit more compassionate in the process doesn't mean you don't get incredible results. When I'm working with clients over, I was walking and then I stopped. When I'm working with clients over 6 months, we're doing these gradual changes and they're seeing phenomenal changes, like, and results. It's not like, oh, this just means like this is a slow approach or it doesn't work as well. No, not at all. When you actually have an approach that's based on your body, when you learn about your body, what works for you, and you apply a lot of curiosity and compassion, phenomenal things can change over a period of time, but they won't change overnight. And that's the kind of danger of this all or nothing toxic thing of just like, I'll just change everything and lose all my weight in the next 2 weeks. You're not going to lose all the weight that you want to lose in 2 weeks, but you could lose a significant chunk in 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Okay? Anyway, I'm going to go. I'm going to go to the gym. Thank you for joining me. Let me know any questions that you have. Otherwise, I will speak to you soon. And if you want to get started, the extension, what a great shot, then make sure you book your root session with me. Details are below. You can book directly in for your 2-hour deep dive. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Bye.